Chapter 1 Bad Dreams. Eyes opened, revealing a desolate land with an endless sky looming above. There was no sun, and yet there was no darkness either. Thoughts flooded his mind. Thoughts that were not his own.
What happened, Jarius? What has taken me? Why am I no longer connected to myself?
Jarius twitched his mouth. The eyes looked about, moving for the first time in hours. I can finally talk. That was agony. Jarius, the only person here, lifted himself up. He scanned the surrounding area as far as he could see. Only gray dirt and endless sky were seen. I've had enough of the 70-second abyss, he said.
What happened to my body?
The voice in his head asked. So you're still in my head, little mind seed. Jason, I could waste my time explaining everything that has happened up until this point. I could spend hours going every detail. But honestly, tell me if it would matter or make any difference. He paused to give the voice in his head named Jason a chance to interject. Nothing up until now matters. The man felt a mental sigh from his mental resident. He gave no reaction to it as he stretched his body to ensure everything still worked. Fingers wiggled and twitched as a spark of magic escaped his hands. The fingers ceased the random movements. On his left hand was a ring with a red gem that reacted to his movements. He faced his palm out to command the ring. The magic spilled out, tearing a hole in the space in front of him. Air split apart as a portal revealed his destination. He walked in, allowing space to revert to normal, just as he passed through.
I saw the memory of how you forged that ring. You summoned that demon when you were a little boy.
Ignoring the voice in his head, he looked around the cavernous room he occupied. Shelves lined the walls, housing books, beakers, flasks, trinkets, and other arcane oddities. His eyes scanned the room, searching for something specific that was within view. My eyes have been different since my resurrection. I can only see a fraction of everything now. This will take time to get used to.
Being mortal has hindered your options, hasn't it?
Jason's mental tone prodded. He walked to the largest table. His human eyes studied the contents as he approached. A clear mortar and pedestal set prepared. Vials held powders that were a mystery to the voice in his head. Yes, it has, but not nearly as much as you might think. I only became a lich in order to live long enough to create you. The only reason I died so often was from my reckless behavior.
Not intending on dying much from now on, I presume? What are those chemicals?
The wizard picked up a clear vial containing green sand. The glass was icy to the touch. Fingers slipped, almost dropping it from the unexpected feeling. Why are you asking me anything? I thought you have access to all of my memories.
I do have access to all of your memories. It's not hard to navigate in your head. There are only two things I can do here: study you and talk to you.
Smiling, he put the vial back in the case on the table. So my suspicions are true. You no longer control me.
It wouldn't have been easy to hide that fact from you, even if I wanted to.
Then there's no time to waste. Rushing over to the bookshelf, his pointer finger moved over each book as he searched for a specific tome, stopping at a particular book.
I looked into your thoughts while you were looking for that book. Do you really think it's honestly a good idea?
The book was placed on an adjacent table. It's like I said, there's no time to waste. He flipped through the pages. With the real you out of the picture, I have the opportunity to get you out of my head.
This should be interesting.
Leaving the book open to a set page, He fetched a large mirror from a dusty corner in the room, placing the mirror on the wall elevated above and to the right of the table that held the book. I imagine that even a psychic as powerful as the real you wouldn't be desperate enough to attempt this. He took a moment to look in the mirror. He had real hair. The hair was long and blonde. His facial features were young, like that of a 22-year-old. There was one feature that stood out on Jarius. He had one blue eye and one brown eye. My eye has been turned brown. Do you think that is an imperfection for my resurrection?
No, I do not. I know that brown eye. Look closer, Jarius. That is my eye.
The wizard stepped back in surprise at this revelation. The mind seed is much stronger than I thought. You are taking over.
No, that is the real me, altered this. You will not turn into me. At the time, I believed you were needed. Only that one eye will be the only semblance of me.
Jarius moved an empty table to the right side of the mirror.
I've seen magic, but I've never really had a front row seat to how it works. Even now, I could see you memorizing spells. You don't even need to look directly at your book to learn them. Magic takes a great deal more effort than psychic powers.
A glass bowl was placed on the right of the table.
With psychic powers, it's like exercising a muscle. While it isn't easy in order to strengthen my psychic abilities, I practiced constantly. Watching how you learn your spells, I find it to be asinine. What you go through with each and every spell.
Jarius placed an hourglass no bigger than his hand on the table. It takes a great deal of patience to practice magic.
Arguably more than it takes to focus on improving psionics. You have to memorize every single spell you intend on casting. The more powerful or potent spell, the more complex it is. The only thing I can compare it to is a mathematical algorithm, but I wouldn't call it that exactly. Then when you cast a spell, it is eradicated from your memory entirely. If you desire to cast the same spell again, you must memorize it again. The whole process is insane.
Now you understand why I have this demon captured in this ring. He held up his left hand, revealing the same red gem ring, allowing the voice in his head to see it. Demon magic, or invocations as they're commonly known, work by a different principle. Some spells I can perform as many times as I desire without tedious memorization. Lowering his hand, he returned to setting up the tables with trinkets, books, and tools. He opened an old book with thousands of blood-stained pages and hundreds of bookmarks sticking out in a multitude of disorganized bookkeeping. This book looked different from his other books. His other books were well kept and organized. He placed this book beside the other open one, angling both to face where he stood in front of the mirror. The final object was a wicked old dagger that even after 209 years had no blemish and no rust. The blade was placed in between the glass bowl and the hourglass.
According to these books, you only require those 3 objects for the spell you're about to do.
Jarius picked up a piece of chalk from a small container behind him. This is a ritual, not a spell.
What's the difference?
He drew a circle around the tables, himself and the container behind. A spell is quick, and a singular magical action or reaction occurs. With a ritual, there are usually multiple spells, and most rituals require multiple participants.
I take it you don't do that many rituals.
Jarius ignored the jab as he finished drawing the circle.
Annoyance is a human emotion. Well, demons get annoyed too. I once saw an angel almost get annoyed. Dragons, elands, gods too, now that I think about it. I suppose feelings are just a thing for the living.
He leaned the mirror close to the tables. Jarius moved his fingers to cast a spell to begin the long, arduous ritual. The first spell sparked red lightning from his finger to the mirror. Krach! Tropas! Came the magical words from his lips. The image of the mirror altered, revealing reddish-gray matter. The matter had a thin layer of blood covering it. The blood moved a steady flow in one direction.
Ah, the brain is such a beautiful sight.
On this, me and you agree. Jarius placed his pointer finger on a specific spot on the glass surface. He drew a circle with his finger, leaving a fingerprint smudge where he touched. He snapped his fingers. The magic magnified the circle his finger created. The mirror zoomed in on the spot. He drew a second circle in the same fashion. He cast a second time. He did this also a third time.
How did you cast the same spell 3 times?
Jarius reached for his scalpel to examine it. I memorized the same spell 3 times.
But how could you memorize it 3 times? The spell is eradicated from your mind when you cast it. How could it still be in your mind to cast 2 more times?
The man chuckled as he placed the fingertips of his left hand onto the glass surface of the mirror. Jason, magic is not science, nor is it mathematics. You already knew this. His fingertips glowed, causing the edges of the mirror to glow the same red shortly thereafter. Touch him! Jarius cast the third spell, transforming the mirror. The mirror's image rippled while his finger still touched the glass. The image remained the same. Magic that I memorized is identical when it is the same spell, yes.
Then how can it stay in your brain if the knowledge is eradicated?
The spell, even an identical one, is stored within my brain, soul, and body. Similar to your repertoire for your psychic powers, the spell remains in my head ready to cast. Jarius removed his fingers from the mirror.
That does not explain it.
His right hand, holding the magical knife, moved slowly to the mirror. Picture, if you will, a shelf inside of my head for symbolism. The knife passed through where the glass was or should be.
Okay.
Now imagine each portion of this shelf holding a spell. Like with any normal bookshelf, you can store 2 of the same thing on it. I can place 2 copies of the same book within 2 different places on this shelf. I can remove 1 copy of said book and still have the other one available. The surgical knife made an incision.
That is one way to explain it, I suppose. I mean, that's just symbolism. Like you said, I do not believe I will ever truly grasp how it works.
Nobody can truly explain it. That is why it is called magic. If it could be explained, then it wouldn't be called magic. It would be just another branch of science.
Well, as fascinating a conversation as this is, I am amazed at how you can talk about it without getting distracted on performing surgery on your own brain. You just cut through the parental lobe without a care in the world. How are you not feeling this?
The small blade I am using has several magical properties on it. The one you are noticing is a numbing ability imbued upon it. Jarius lifted the blade slightly. The neurons that he was cutting through recombined themselves the moment the blade lost contact with them.
Wow! And what of that? Those brain cells actually healed, as if you never cut through them.
Yes, that would be the second ability infused on this surgical tool of mine. Jarius resumed the surgery. The magical cutting tool delved all the way through without harm. Oh, fuck! He casually cast the spell. The outer layer vanished from sight. The next portion of the brain tissue was revealed.
I am looking at your spells in your mind now. You have that last one at the ready several more times. This operation you're performing is quite fascinating. Now we can clearly see the limbic system. I am not much further.
The new brain portion looked no different than the other portions of the surrounding brain tissue. Jarius cut through it with precision. His hand was perfectly steady. You seem awfully calm for someone who was about to cease to exist.
Funny you should mention that.
Jarius halted the surgery. The knife ceased cutting. Why is that funny?
Number one, my true self will still live, even if he is under the control of Dagon.
Number two? Jarius asked.
Oh, I think it'll be more fun for you to discover it than to just tell you.
Jarius shrugged. I wouldn't tell me either, whatever it is. He continued the surgery. He gently sliced through the white matter of the fornix, entering the thalamus. He cast the spell a second time. The fornix vanished in the very same fashion as the previous layers.
The outer layer of the limbic system looks so much like the majority of the brain, doesn't it? Do you notice anything missing?
Jarius glared at the picture in front of him. With slow caution, he pulled the scalpel out from within the image of the mirror in front of himself. No harm was done. He sighed. So you moved.
Correct, and do not bother to try to locate me. I can move as much as I desire. The little collection of neurons that is the mind seed that is me can go anywhere within your brain.
You knew this the entire time? Jarius threw the magical tool across the room.
Oh, your amygdala is active. How does anger feel? You've been undead for so long that you have completely forgotten what it's like to be human and alive.
Jarius screamed with rage. He pointed his hand at the opposite wall within the cavern. The red ring flashed. A purple ball of fiery light escaped his hand, blasting into the wall, burning a small hole into the rock. He fired 3 more times, attempting to deal with his newfound anger. Turning back around to the mirror, he plunged a fist covered with the purple fire into the now ordinary mirror. His natural reflection shattered, causing glass to spray across the room. He retracted his hand, dismissing the eldritch power. His hand had several glass shards protruding from his flesh. Blood dripped on the floor as he howled in pain.
Lots of pain receptors firing in here, too. This is quite enjoyable seeing you like this. You've always had such a calm demeanor, especially with the way you plot things out. Me being in here dampens your plans exponentially, doesn't it?
The wizard attempted to control his heavy breathing. He stopped moving, closed his eyes in an attempt to calm himself. He inhaled a deep breath, then exhaled. The breathing repeated several times before Jarius spoke. I am glad you are enjoying this.
The normal Jarius has returned. If I could clap for you, I would.
Jason's tone was sour. I am tired. Jarius looked at his cavern, his home. I do not own a bed.
No, you do not. That rocky floor looks very uncomfortable, not to mention very glassy, after you lost your temper just now.
Reclaspus! Jarius cast the spell. The glass on the floor and around the room, and even in his hand, flew back into place in the mirror. The cracks and imperfections reverted, the broken pieces into repair.
Well, that was an easy cleanup. You still have a bed problem, though. Your remaining arcane spells are all brain surgery spells, defensive spells, offensive spells, and a few miscellaneous spells. None of them could help you conjure a bed, food, or water. Those simple human needs you now have.
Jarius put his uninjured hand over his stomach. His belly growled with hunger. Tired and hungry. His voice cracked with a dry sound in the last word. Thirsty. He leaned on the table, feeling the fatigue begin to overpower. He sighed.
Well, Father, whatever shall you do?
Jarius pushed himself from the table. He walked to a cabinet containing spell components. Opening the door, the contents were revealed. Bottles and flasks were on every shelf, each labeled with various words and runes. There was a small bottle on the bottom shelf. He bent down to grab it.
A pint of water. You use this stuff for one of your spell components. For a few spells, this particular water is unholy water. It is your only water supply right now.
Jarius removed the sealed cap. He quickly guzzled it down his throat. The taste was rancid. It left a horrible taste in his mouth. All he tasted was rotting death.
Oh, this is going to be good. Well, good for me anyways. Your dreams tonight will be most entertaining. For me, that is.
Jarius paused the drinking, leaving less than a third of the unholy water. I need food now. He looked at a dead rat sitting in a cage next to the cabinet.
Yummy.
With Eldritch fire, he fried the rat. The thing was charred all the way through.
Aw, I was hoping you would eat the thing raw.
Sorry to disappoint. Jarius bit right into the rat, ignoring the poor flavor. He ate the morsel and consumed the remainder of the unholy water. Laying down on the cavern floor, he shut his eyes and fell asleep. Darkness was everywhere. He felt himself knelt down. His hands were bound and extended in front of his body, clamped in what felt like wood. His neck was bound in similar wooden restraints. Kill the traitor! A guttural voice in front of him yelled. Where am I? Jarius attempted to shake the restraints, only to feel them tighten by the attempt. Panic gripped the wizard, forcing him to struggle. The restraints dug into his skin on his feet, wrists, and neck. He felt the moist blood trickling down his ankles and wrists. Jarius wheezed a cough at his inability to breathe and talk. Through the pain, he heard approaching bootsteps. A palm seized the top of his head. With a sudden pulling sensation from that hand, Jarius was overwhelmed by the introduction of light. The cloth sack that was the only thing visible due to the light blindness. The sack was casually dropped on the ground. As his pupils adjusted, Jarius made out shapes of people. The closest person, on his right, was a very large figure. Behind the large figure, Jarius saw a crowd. The crowd was full of indistinguishable individuals that blended together. His eyes adjusted further, allowing a figure on his left to be seen. They were in the shape of a hooded woman. I was so worried, the woman began, that when you finally got here, that this would be no fun. Now that you are alive, we are going to have such entertainment with your soul. Jarius struggled to respond, but the suffocating neckpiece was still choking him. The hooded woman bent low to a few inches above eye level. Her facial features became indistinguishable. The pointed ears, thin face, and thin nose gave away her elven heritage. Her dark complexion confirmed that she was either a dark elf or half-dark elf. She had a sense of malevolent pride within her solid black eyes.
She wanted me to see her face. Why?
The woman smiled as she placed her lips inches from his ears. She whispered, Yes, I did want you to see my face. She backed away, stood straight, and turned around to face the still dark crowd. The traitor is here! The crowd erupted in angry cheers. Father has not only abandoned us, but now he fights against his own creations. A flash of lightning escaped her fingertips, arching over the crowd. The brief illumination revealed the various forms throughout the vast crowd that only now were understood to stretch for miles. Within that moment, their demonic features were exposed. Horns, tentacles, thorned extremities, multi-limbed and multi-eyed things filled the crowd. Jarius never feared a demon before. He had not felt fear in over 208 years. The choking sensation, combined with the tall man standing to his right and the horrible monstrosities before him that were beyond counting, caused him to feel it. His pulse raced, his pores sweat profusely, the tongue swelled, and his eyes widened from this old forgotten sensation. The woman pointed her wrinkled finger at Jarius. Though her face was young, her hands betrayed her elder age. Elves did not have a finite natural lifespan. They could theoretically live indefinitely. Something about this particular dark elf was all too familiar to the restrained wizard. Her calling him father brought suspicions to mind. Who is ready for a night of simple pleasures that make eternity truly worth enduring? She shouted to the crowd.
How do I live without breathing?
She laughed as she turned back to face Jarius. Continuing her laughter, she walked to him and yanked him by his hair with a grip of animosity. The mysterious woman lifted his head. He felt every single hair on his head ripping from the root, yet not pulled out. She stood to his left slightly to allow everyone in the crowd to witness. You live because I allow you to live. I want you to live through what we are going to do to you. She dropped his hair, allowing his head to flop down. Then she fiddled with the restraint that Jarius could not see that held his neck. She loosened it to allow him to speak. And what are you going to do? She smiled again as she retightened the neck piece, choking Jarius yet again, except tighter now than before. She could not even cough. For starters, we shall do to you everything you have done to others. The elven woman raised her hand to the crowd. Who would like to see this former lich feel the fires that he burned into his own brother? Burn him! The demons screamed. The woman pointed to the man on the left of Jarius. Jarius looked at him, and his features became evident. He was human, with short blonde hair, and wore a cooking apron. He had not seen this man since he was a boy of the age of 10.
Jeffrey Kane? My brother?
Yes, Father Cretan. He is the first human you killed, your brother. The woman and the crowd laughed. The woman snapped her fingers, causing a green mist to form next to Jeffrey. The mist quickly dissipated, revealing a long lever attached to the ground. Jeffrey held a determined, angry glare. He placed both hands on the lever, then pulled. Jarius felt the ground beneath him open, followed by a falling sensation. The restraints vanished as he fell face first into the fires below. Fear gripped him to where he could not even think of a spell to save himself from this terrible fate. His skin bubbled and popped as fire burned him alive. End of chapter 1.